Hey everybody, it's GobletX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today I'll be playing another premiere draft of Throne of Eldraine. This is a flashback draft of a Historic and Explorer legal set only, but it is a flashback of a set that is going to be coming back soon. There's going to be Wilds of Eldraine, the second set based on the Plane of Eldraine, coming around in just a moment, so pretty cool to get a little bit of a blast in the past here. That's going to be kind of a preview of things to come. It's a very fairy tale centric plane with a lot of cool stuff going on. For our pack 1 pick 1, it's going to be pretty easily a Wildborn Preserver. This is a 2-mana 2/2 with flash and reach. That's already pretty good. Instant speed, flash this out, trade it into a good creature of your opponent's, or if you have it sitting on the board later, you just get to keep dumping all of your extra mana into putting extra +1/+1 counters on this card whenever you play a non-human creature. So I like Wildborn Preserver a lot. It's a great rare, and it's an easy pack 1 pick 1. For pack 1 pick 2, we have 3 really good options and some more that are pretty great as well. I think the best 3 options are Fierce Witchstalker, great 4-drop, just a 4-mana 4/4 trample, hits the board with a food token. There's Marrowleaf Pixie if we want to go towards green-blue ramp. This is a great little mana dork for that. And there's Grumgully the Generous, which is a very good card for green-red non-humans as a deck. Just an aggressive deck where you want to play a bunch of non-human creatures like elves and wolves and all that kind of stuff. So those are the 3 best picks. I think these are the ones that would be very reasonable to take, but there's some other good cards like Rimrock Knight, Trapped in the Tower, Twinveil Treefolk, and Outmuscle. Just a really good pack overall. I'm going to play it super safe here. I think we're starting with 2 really strong green cards if I just go Wildborn Preserver into Fierce Witchstalker, and that's going to leave us open to choosing whatever second color seems the most open over time, rather than diving headfirst into a 2-color pair right off the bat. For pack 1 pick 3, we've got a Trapped in the Tower for decent white removal. Mystical Dispute is a solid blue counterspell. That's kind of it. 7 Dwarfs would be okay. In a non-human deck, if we're going super aggro, I guess Wildwood Tracker would work. It is a 1-mana 2/2 as long as you control another creature if your whole deck is non-humans. That might actually be deceptively good. Most 1-drops have been pretty bad in older limited sets, but this might be when they started actually making them pretty good. I'm actually a little bit excited about that. Maybe overly so. Maybe the pick is just Trapped in the Tower, or like Lost Legion because of its really good enter the battlefield effect, but I think Wildwood Tracker, just stick to non-human aggro stuff. We could be in a pretty aggressive deck here. Pack 1 pick 4, speaking of non-human aggro, we could take a Rosethorn Halberd, although this is like right on that cutoff where I start getting pretty unexcited. 1 mana for an equipment that does give +2/+1, and it auto-equips the first time you play it, but then re-equipping it later costs 5 mana, which is a lot, so don't think I'm going to stick to mono-green non-humans now. I could take Red Cap Raiders for just red-green non-human aggro, or Order of Midnight in black as a really good value play. It has the adventure to pick up a creature card from our graveyard, and then we can cast the creature at a later time as a 2/2 flyer that can't block, so pretty good for an aggressive deck. I like Order of Midnight and Red Cap Raiders the best, followed by Trapped in the Tower, Runaway together is good interaction. I think I'll go for Order of Midnight here. Seems like very good value if we head in the green-black direction. Although looks like green-red might be more likely here because we do get another Red Cap Raiders in pick 5 and no black cards here. Again, not very excited about the green card. You can definitely get 2 for 1 when you're playing a big aura like this. If you cast this on one of your creatures and it just gets bounced by a blue bounce spell or destroyed by some instant speed black removal spell, you're going to have a pretty bad time. So we'll take a Red Cap Raiders here. Pick 6 now? Well, gonna keep bouncing around between black and red, I think, because Bake Into a Pie is that incredible instant speed removal. 4 mana instant, destroy a creature, and get a food token. Really efficient way to deal with any creature. There's also a Clockwork Servant, which is very good if you're super heavy into 1 color, if you're as close to monocolored as possible. Which is another thing that's really nice about Eldraine. If you just stick to 1 color really heavily, you can actually end up in almost completely a monocolored deck in this format. There are cards that incentivize you to do that, like Clockwork Servant. Also, there's rares that are like triple green or quadruple green. I might You know what? This is a little weird, but I'm just going to take Clockwork Servant because that just got me a little bit excited there, thinking about being able to draft monocolor decks for the first time in a while. That could be pretty cool. But did just pass the bacon to the pie, so now there's a pretty big black signal to the people on our left. So I don't think we're going to get a lot of good black in pack 2 if somebody hops onto that train. This pack's pretty bad in general. I think it's really unlikely that I play a Fling, even if I am red-green, so I guess I'm taking a black card, even though I don't really want to end up in black now, after setting some good black signals. Another really weak pack. None of these cards are things I would like to end up in my deck. Guess I'll just take the non-human red creature. There's another Wildwood Tracker. I'll play with that. I think the best card here is Unexplained Vision. If you're very heavy into blue, draw 3, scry 3 is a huge amount of card advantage. So that is a really nice card as well. That would be an option. Pick 10, pretty much nothing here. Very empty pack. I'll take a Forever Young. Pretty empty pack. We'll take a non-human creature with 7 dwarves, although Castle Embereth is not terrible. Definitely better than a mountain. Better than a 7 dwarves? Probably by a little bit. Sure, we'll take the Castle Embereth there. Nothing playable here. Check the collection progress, because I just own everything. This is a very old set, so I probably do own pretty much everything. Once we get into these late picks, holding down that Alt key to see how many I own in my collection, probably going to be like, we just already own everything. All right, pack 2, pick 1. Pretty happy to be in green, because we just open up a Great Henge to stick to green with some good stuff. This is going to be pretty expensive unless we have a solid-sized creature on the board, but once we resolve this, we get to gain 2 life every turn and get 2 extra mana every turn, and then anytime we play a creature, comes into play with a +1/+1 counter on it, and we draw a card. Just so much value off the Great Henge. It is a ridiculously good card, so we'll take that, and now we can go ahead and take a Grumgully. We didn't wheel the Grumgully in pack 1, but we look really likely to be green-red at this point. I mean, I guess we only really have one good red card right now, which is Redcap Raiders. So maybe we are still equally on green-black as we are green-red. I guess that kind of is the case. So maybe I just take the Ehrenbrig Paladin because I'm super heavy into green. I'll definitely be able to get the Adamant trigger on that, have it be a 5-mana 5/5 that's really hard to block. Yeah, and that leaves the second color still open. Maybe we get pushed into green-white or green-blue or something weird. Very tempted to take Grumgully. It's very close between Grumgully and the Paladin. I'll go for the Paladin here. We'll keep doing our green beef stuff, especially with the Great Henge now. Redcap Raiders out of red. Nothing great in blue for just splashing in some blue in a very green-centric deck. Unexplained Vision, again, the best card, but you want to be heavy in blue for that. Dispute's pretty good too. I'll just take another Redcap Raiders here over a Wildwood Tracker. Now, Scalding Cauldron is quite solid because it is a decent removal spell that can fit into any deck. 4 mana for 3 damage to a creature is a little bit below rate, but you get to spread it out how you want against multiple turns, or throughout multiple turns. So if you're on turn 3, you have 3 lands out, you've got a 2-drop in your hand and a Cauldron, it's really easy to get your initial 1-mana investment out of the way. Or if it's turn 1, you have the Cauldron in hand, you don't have a 1-mana creature, you can get the 1-mana investment out of the way. So this plays a lot more like just 3 mana, 3 damage to a creature, which is perfectly on par for limited. So I like Cauldron a good amount, especially really early in the draft, like pack 1, because it's another one of these cards that can just end up in your deck no matter what colors you end up playing, because it's fine filler removal for anything. This will be an easy Fierce Witch Stalker now. Another beefy non-human creature that comes with additional value by entering the battlefield with a food token. Kind of weird they gave the Emery that March the Machines card style, even going backwards back to Eldraine. That's interesting. If you own the March the Machine card style, you get that there. We don't have a lot of creatures that have adventures, and this is a human, so it's actually kind of unexciting for a lot of reasons. So I'll probably take 7 dwarves over the Garenbrig Squire. I think I'd rather just have a non-human than something that gets slightly bigger when I'm casting adventures. We'll take 7 dwarves there. Probably deep enough into green for gingerbread cabin to be decent value, although there's another scalding cauldron. I probably should rather just take that. Not a huge fan of very narrow, very small anthem effects like Ferocity of the Wilds. There are board states where this will theoretically be pretty great, but only affects you while you're attacking, and it only gives +1 power. Even if this didn't have the non-human clause, that'd be pretty narrow. So, yeah, we're drafting a deck where the non-human clause doesn't matter, but again, as I was saying, even without that clause, I just don't know how good that is. Take another red cap Raiders. A lot of potential just 3 mana 4/3 tramplers here to really get bashing in. And our curve is looking really aggressive, so we might try out the Rosethorn Halberd thing. I don't know how well that's going to play out, but this would be the deck to try it. Some really good blue stuff just rolling around. Tome Raider and Covetous Urge still here. Excellent stuff there. I'm not going to play a Crystal Slipper, so I'll just rare draft the highest rarity card. And now we'll just hit some random nonsense in the end. See what we open up in pack 3. We need to find 7 more playables in the last pack, ideally. Hopefully things work out well there. I like our creatures a lot. We have decent removal with 2 cauldrons. Yeah, just kind of need a few more cards of whatever we find. Like the curve overall. A couple more 2-drops would be nice for sure. So mainly we want like 2 mana creatures and a little bit better removal, and then we'll have a solid deck. See if we can't find that all as we move into pack number 3. Pack 3 pick 1 is a little bit of a bummer for us. Nothing spectacular for our green-red deck. There's a Clackbridge Troll. Of course, since we picked red instead of black, we open up a great black rare instead of a great red rare. Could still try to bounce backwards towards that, but I don't think I should. I think I can just take like Thunderous Snapper here for potential card draw off of Garenberg Paladin Great Henge. It's only 2 cards right now. Maybe I take the Twin Veil Treefolk as the more consistent card. It's just going to be solid no matter what. And then we might be able to wheel the Thunderous Snapper because its mana cost is very restrictive. You have to be super heavy into green or blue or both. So we'll take Twin Veil Treefolk and see if we can get that other one back. Edgewall Innkeeper is a fantastic value play if you have a lot of creatures with adventures, but we are in pack 3 and we have 1 creature with an adventure right now. So pretty narrow there. Trail of Crumbs, another fantastic value play if you have a lot of food, but we're in pack 3 and we have 2 food cards right now. So both of those are awkward. I still want to take one of them and hope to get more cards that synergize with one, because I think they're both potentially just so much card draw over time. I think I'll go for the Trail of Crumbs. This is more selective card draw. Every time we're sacrificing a food, we spend 1, look at the top 2 cards of our library, reveal a permanent from among them, and put them into our hand. So we get to pick a card out of the top 2, where with the Edgewall Innkeeper, we just straight draw 1 card blind. But with Trail of Crumbs, because currently every single card in our deck is a permanent, we just get to pick the best card out of our top 2 every turn. So Trail of Crumbs could be pretty sweet here. Take another 7 Dwarfs for another 2-drop, and it potentially buffs the first one. Don't think that Fires of Invention is super good. It's great in like Cube Draft where you have tons of explosive, hard to cast spells, but in a regular draft format like this, we're pretty fine just curving out normally. This isn't going to be that explosive, and then we'll just be down a card once we're done dumping our hand. So we'll take 7 Dwarfs here. No food production, definitely not super happy about that. Also, the big Cauldron of Eternity, that's probably a pretty good card. I mean, it's a lot of mana, but reanimating a creature for only 3 mana every turn is insane. Yeah, things are looking pretty sad for us that we didn't end up in green-black, but hey, at least we've got a lot of aggressive stuff going on in our green-red deck. Maybe we can just beat some people out of the game before they establish too much of a board state. Fingers crossed. Take a Gingerbread Cabin now. Especially now that we have a Trail of Crumbs. And I am going to have a lot of forests in here. Now, We've got Rimrock Knight, really aggressive little dork, or Golden Egg for another food with the Trail of Crumbs. I think I'd rather take the super, super aggressive card here. Boulder Rush plus a 2-mana 3/1, super, super good. Now we've got Garenbrig Carver for a combat trick and a 4-drop creature, more flexible than the Paladin for sure. Paladin's bigger. I think if I took Edgewall Innkeeper, I'd be super happy to take Carver, but since I didn't, I'll get another 5-drop kind of finisher sort of thing. Also potentially makes the Great Henge way easier to cast if we have this on board. Another Scalding Cauldron. We're just going to be on all cauldrons as our removal spells, which would normally be a little bit of a bummer, but with Trail of Crumbs, there's like a little bit of an advantage of having cauldrons as your removal spells, because that means Trail of Crumbs can dig for removal too, which is pretty cool. Ginger Brute, well, there we go. Another card for Trail of Crumbs. That certainly counts as a food. It's also a hasty, non-human creature to drop early. Another Gingerbread Cabin is fantastic. Another Rose Thorn Halberd could be fine for us. 18 creatures, 7 non-creatures. Yeah, we'll run double Halberd and see how it goes. I don't think we're going to be a spinning wheel deck. Alright, this will be an interesting one. Heavy green, green-red non-humans aggro. Can try out a couple Rosethorn Halberds, a couple Wildwood Trackers to even just try to be bashing in with just 1-mana 2/2s and stuff. This is going to be a pretty cool draft. I don't think I've gone this deep on the non-human aggro deck before in this format. I also just didn't play this format too much. Because when it first came out on Arena, it was quick drafts only, and quick drafts of this format were an absolute tragedy. It was so blue-black mill focused, because it's the best archetype in the format, and the bots were not drafting it nearly enough, so you could just force blue-black mill every single time so easily. So this format was super bad during quick draft, so I did not play very much of it. Because that's the only format that was around when it came out. They didn't add Premier Draft for quite some time later. Alright, so I need to cut 2 cards. I should probably cut a creature and a non-creature here. Maybe a land, but I am trying to get to a Great Henge. It's a phenomenal card. I'll cut one of these Halberds. I know Cauldron's pretty solid, pretty decent. The Halberd I'm just kind of trying out here, so if I end up liking it a ton, I can throw the second one in. We'll see how it plays out for us. And then for creatures, probably like Maraleaf Rider here. I don't have a ton of food production, and I would like to ideally have them around in case I top deck like Trail of Crumbs or something. 7 Dwarves, Rimrock Knight. This kind of stuff is better than just a 3/1 that basically has no text. Although I am trying to be really heavy into green, so maybe keep the green 2-drop over the red one, especially when we have very few ways to trigger the draw 2 effect. That is much more for like the blue-red archetype, where you have a lot of ways to draw a card like Clockwork Servant. But right now we have the draw step during our turn plus the draw off of Clockwork Servant. That would be a draw 2, or the draw step during our turn plus 1 piece of card draw off of the Great Henge would be a draw 2. So we have 2 ways in our entire deck to trigger the Wolverine. That's even less consistent than the Maraleaf Rider, so we'll drop the Wolverine. Plus the Rider is just bigger when it's not triggering. It's a 3/1 instead of a 2/1, so we'll do that. That also lets us be a little heavier into green to run more green sources for these Gingerbread Cabins to be more consistent, to hit these double green on Witchstalker more consistently, the triple green on Garenbrig Paladin. So we can cut and go 10-7 split here. I still have 2 mana red cards I'd like to ideally cast sometime pretty early in the game, so I don't really want to go too much more than 10-7. Maybe I could go 11-6, but I'm going to keep it at 10-7 here so I can still relatively consistently be jamming out 7 Dwarves and Redcap Raiders turn 2, turn 3, especially Redcap Raiders turn 3. This is one of our best aggro cards, because once your opponent starts establishing some 2/2s, 2/3s on the board, then that can help nullify your 2/2s of your own, your 3/1s and stuff. But a 4/3 trample can attack into a lot of board states. Sure, it might trade off, but it can trade off and trample over and then clear the path for some other creatures to get through. So I think Raiders is just a really good, really important attacker to be dropping turn 3 consistently. So let's go 10-7 instead of 11-6 and call it a deck there. Alright, here's a look at the complete deck list for today. We are on a green-red aggro deck with a really aggressive curve. We have 3 1-mana creatures, 2 of which can potentially just be 1-mana 2/2s, one of which is a nice hasty creature that can become unblockable later in the game if we just invest 1 mana into it any turn we want to ping our opponent. And these are all really good with Rose Thorn Halberd. This can give one of them +2/+1 immediately, so we can have a potentially unblockable 3-power creature, or have our 1-mana 2/2 kind of start attacking in as a 4/3, which is pretty big. So Halberd could be interesting for this deck. If it ends up playing super well, we've got a second in the sideboard we could try to pull in and see how it does. But for now, we're trying out the 1 copy because it's theoretically really aggressive, really nice with those cards. At 2 mana, we've got 5 2-drop creatures to curve out after our 3 1-drops. We've got Rimrock Knight for a combat trick and an aggressive stat line. Couple 7-doors just for some more non-human creatures to play on curve. Marrowleaf Rider, again, more non-human creatures to play on curve. And then Wildborn Preserver, one of the best bombs in her deck. It's going to keep getting bigger as the game progresses. If I top deck a 1-drop creature like Wildwood Tracker late in the game, but I have a Wildborn Preserver on board, all of a sudden this gives me something great to do with the rest of my mana. I can just dump my leftover 3-4 mana into just buffing the Preserver up a bunch. So a really nice ability on that card. We're pretty heavy into green over red, so we can try to get some adamant triggers on cards like Clockwork Servant, turning it into a 3-mana 2/3 that draws us a card, and Garenbrig Paladins can also get adamant, turning them into 5-mana 5/5s that are hard to block. We've also got some more beef with Twinveil Treefolk beefing up our other creatures with its Oaken Boon Adventure, and a couple Fierce Witch Stalkers for some big tramplers. At 3 mana, we also have Redcap Raiders, which is nice mid-range beef. A card that can just start attacking on turn 4 as a 4-power trampler. That can get a lot of damage in. So lots of just really nice, aggressive, non-human creatures. That is the part that I really like about this deck. The thing that's a little more dirtily, a little more awkward, is going to be particularly the removal spells here. 3 copies of Scalding Cauldron. That's it. That's what we got for removal. That's what we're going to try to use. I could see, actually, because this is a bit weaker removal, maybe trying to go for the double halberd and just be less interactive here, since our interaction just isn't spectacular. And I think I'm actually going to make that change right now. We'll drop 1 cauldron. We'll actually go double halberd, double cauldron instead of 3 cauldron, 1 halberd. So that will be one final change to this deck. Since our interaction isn't great, let's just focus on trying to cheese out some quick victories with just a ton of power instead. We've also got 2 great consistent ways to draw cards, the Great Henge being the most consistent one. The inconsistent part about this is the mana cost, though. It could be really, really expensive if we don't have at least one of our 4-power creatures on board, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 creatures that can really easily have 4 or more power. So that should make Great Henge potentially castable at 5 mana the vast majority of the time, which is pretty helpful. Should get it on the board, should get us to start drawing cards and gaining life and just doing ridiculous things with this card. And then Trail of Crumbs, really nice at digging through our deck looking for some better permanents as we're sacrificing foods, but we don't have that many food tokens in this deck. We have the Trail that makes a food right when you play it, so worst case scenario, if I don't draw any other food production, it will replace itself eventually. So that's not horrible. There's not too much of a cost in running this if I don't hit more food, but I'm not going to hit that much more food because we just have 2 Fierce Witch Stalkers for food production, 1 Gingerbrute that counts as a food, and a couple Gingerbread Cabins that might get there. So 2 pieces of potential card draw, but both have their own flaws that make them a little bit inconsistent. Overall, though, again, great aggressive curve of creatures. Try to just cheese out some victories, throwing some halberds on stuff early, and just being as uninteractive as possible. Just bash some face, get aggressive, and see how the deck does. That is our game plan. We'll see how it functions for us as we head into the gameplay. Here we are on the play for game 1. This is an awkward opening hand, but I am going to keep it here. We have a lot of 1 and 2 mana creatures in this deck that we can draw into. That can make this curve a lot better. If we don't hit them, we need our opponent to not be an aggressive deck, but if they're not an aggressive deck, getting a Paladin out and then getting a Great Henge going could be insane. And there we go, we hit one of our one-drop creatures, so we can just get that Halberd going on it and start beating in for 3 minimum. If I draw another creature, I'll start attacking for 4 a turn off of its +1/+1 effect, which would be super good. Aw, super awkward. Always a massive bummer to get got by the very narrow, very specific color hosing cards like that. At least we've got the 3/2 to trade into it, but if they have removal to clear our 3/2 out of the way, we are going to start this game very far behind because they're going to be drawing an extra card every single time that deals combat damage to us. This card is quite solid at 4 mana, so if your opponent gets the cost reduction on it, casts it for only 2, that is super, super good. Alright, there's a Wildborn Preserver now. Pretty solid. We'll flash that in, no reason to just play it in my main phase. They're gonna go for an Eye Collector now. Well, I've got the Reach creature to block that, thanks to Wildborn Preserver. Let's drop the Wildborn Preserver down. Draw Redcap Raiders. Alright, awkward. Needed a 5th land there so we can play Paladin into Great Henges. That was the hope. Now we can't do anything. We have to pass the turn. I'm 1 land from greatness, because as soon as I get a Paladin down, the Great Henge is castable. Even if I don't get a Paladin down, if I attack with Tracker and they don't want to trade their Death Toucher into it, we could just play the Great Henge then, because Tracker would be a 4-power creature, reducing Great Henge's cost by another 1. Ooh, these draws are not what I'm looking for, but we're not under much pressure. And 1 mana creature is certainly better than just drawing like a 3 mana creature here, because we get to buff up the Preserver some more. I guess this means at least we get to drop a Great Henge next turn, so if I don't hit a land, I can use the Great Henge as my land. The turn after that, and then I can start playing Paladins. Okay, I hit a land, but it's a tap land, so... I mean, we still play it, obviously, but we're going to be playing a Great Henge here. And... chilling? Yep. Great Henge probably gets there. We're stable on board, and then we just start drawing a bunch of extra cards. I could chip in for 1 with Gingerbrute, but I just want to hold all these blockers up. Our opponent's got a card draw engine of their own. Didn't even notice that because it was just a land, but Castle Lochthwain's certainly a card draw engine. 3 mana, tap it, draw a card, lose life equal to the number of cards in their hand, so they want to dump out their hand every turn and then use the castle. But still probably draws them an extra card at least every other turn. So we're both going to be drawn through some cards, digging through our decks here. They're going to slap a Giant Skewer onto the Eye Collector. Well, I'll trade into their combat trick here. We'll see what it is, or if we just get a hidden reach kill. Might have gotten a hidden reach kill there. Scalding Cauldron, okay, that's fine. Get rid of their only flyer, so I don't really need the reach creature anymore. I certainly don't need like a single 10/10 Wildborn Preserver to win this game. Great Henge will win this game handily by itself. Totally forgot there for a second. That was a punt. Not a massive punt. The 2 life probably doesn't matter too much, but I should have tapped the Great Henge just to gain a couple life for fun. Now, to play another creature, draw another card. I've got Trail of Crumbs with another food. Oh my god, I'm going to have Trail of Crumbs with 2 food tokens. Yeah, I mean, Great Henge takes over the game. We're winning regardless. They can't block the Paladin. Well, they can block it with a Roving Keep, so never mind on that. Well, if I top deck Rimrock Knight, if they block with Roving Keep, then I use Rimrock Knight. Nothing else on their board can block this. So they'll take the 6. I think I just keep playing Paladins, since they've got 1 creature that can block them. Play a Gingerbread Paladin for more food to go with Trail of Crumbs, so we can get all kinds of card draw from that. Pass the turn. And this is just the Great Henge doing Great Henge things. Throw a giant skewer onto an Okame adversary, and now they can trade the Okame adversary into one of the paladins. They can only do that to one of the paladins, so one of these can still kill the Roving Keep. Although, do they have the 7 up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 5 mana up. 6. I was right on 6. They have 6 thanks to Rosethorn Acolyte, but still... I dropped something. I don't even know what I dropped there. Still not enough mana to buff the Roving Keep and kill both of my paladins. They just kill one paladin here, and they're not going to block the other one, still playing around the combat trick, which is certainly going to work for them. So now we're going to sacrifice a food to dig for another creature in our deck to play for the turn and get another Great Henge card draw. And there we go, Redcap Raiders. Cool with me. Drop that, draw a card. Draw into a Twinveil Treefolk. I can buff up the Gingerbrute and have a big unblockable creature. Sure, we'll do that with the rest of my mana. Just load up the Gingerbrute and start sending that in unblockably. Unless they draw a haste creature, which I don't think is super likely for a green-black deck to have. Oh no! Scalding Cauldron off the top. Goodbye, Gingerbrute. The cookie has been destroyed. Not the gumdrop buttons. So Giant Skewer is on the Cauldron Familiar now. That's actually really good for our opponent. They're at 5 life though, so maybe we just trample it out with a bunch of Redcap Raiders. If I buff both of these, they're 5 power, which is enough with the +2 to make it 7 power and trade into the keep. Yeah. Let's play some more non-human creatures so that I can attack with the Paladin and both the Raiders and get some trample attacks in there. And I can hold up the Boulder Rush from the Rimrock Knight to be able to kill a Roving Keep if they block one of them there. I mean, I probably just attack with everybody. Wildwood Tracker can't kill the keep if they block that, but they're at 5, potentially 8 if they sack a food. We're at 30. It's going to be really hard for them to kill us in one swing on the Crackback. Okay, so they do block a Redcap Raider, so we will be able to trade into the Roving Keep with our Boulder Rush from Rimrock Knight. They're just going to chump block the 4/3, take 5. I can't lethal them. I can deal 7 to them, but a food gains 3, so they'd be at 8 life essentially here. So since I can't lethal them, we just get the Roving Keep kill. Get the Roving Keep trade, I should say. But we will be putting them to 3 life. Could have instead chose to put them to 1, but I think it's better to just clear their board and put them at 3 than it is to let them keep a 5/7 and put them to 1. So Cauldron Familiar doing its thing. They've got a bunch of extra food, so it's going to be a chump blocker for days. There's another Roving Keep. But they're at 4 life, so an all attack here feels very, very lethal. Still draw some extra cards just in case, plus now we can attack with everybody and buff the Raiders. Do I dig for permanence? No, let's just send everybody in at this point. I do want to get that free Great Henge draw first, but I don't want to toy around with Trail of Crumbs. They're almost definitely dead now. And they are going to scoop them up. We are 1-0. A victory in game 1, really just showing off the Great Henge being a completely busted mythic rare magic card. Anybody who plays a lot of Commander already knew that card is insane, so nothing much to be learned or gained there, but certainly happy to get a win out of the way as we head into round number 2. And here we are for game number 2. Double Wildwood Tracker. This is a little bit of a greedy keep. We really need to hit 1 land at least. But any land is good, because a mountain means that we have both our colors, and a forest means we have adamant for Clockwork Servants. But yeah, 2 1-mana 2/2s is really exciting to me, so I'm going to keep the hand. 2 1-mana 2/2s, then a 2-mana 3/1. We hit the mountain. I think I play a tracker now, so I can guaranteed start just hitting for 2 next turn. So 7 dwarves from our opponent. Okay, I can trade my 1-drop into their 2-drop. We draw into a forest, which is beautiful. So I can work on getting that gingerbread cabin active. I could also just go for Clockwork Servant, but with Trail of Crumbs in hand, I'm going to get greedy with the cabin and try to make sure I get a food off of that. So let's drop the Marrowleaf Rider so that the tracker attacks as a 2/2. I could, again, as I was saying, because I have the Clockwork Servant in hand, I could just play the cabin tapped this turn and play the other tracker and attack with a 2/2. So that next turn I play the forest and adamant out the Clockwork Servant. But if I wait till I have 3 other forests on board to play this gingerbread cabin, then I could get another food token, which means another card draw off of the Trail of Crumbs, which is just more value. And our opponent's going to try to race us here, which is interesting. We've got a Rosethorn Halberd. Now, do I bite the bullet, give up on the triple forest for gingerbread cabin, just play Halberd plus tracker? Or do I play Trail of Crumbs plus tracker? I think... I mean, it looks like a really aggro matchup here where card draw in the end is not going to be super important, so let's just get all the damage we can in ASAP. Just do this, and then this leads into us playing the Servant and drawing a card next turn. This is the maximum damage we can put on the board right now. The race is still on. They're just attacking with everybody here. Here comes some kind of removal. Hopefully they didn't find Fearfire Foes in a Throne of Eldraine draft from Lord of the Rings, the X damage to something and 1 to everybody else. They've got a Slaying Fire, so they kill one of our creatures. That's fine. We are still going to be winning this race because we can produce some food tokens in the future pretty easily. Would I rather play 7 Dwarfs plus Trail of Crumbs or just a 2/3 and draw a card? These both hit just as hard, so let's get the Trail of Crumbs out, I think. Obviously need to play the mountain first. Slightly more mana efficient, and now we have the ability to use Marrowleaf Rider's effect, plus we have a food token out to help win the race, gaining 3 life. And they are done. They are over it. We are now 2-0. Really nice aggressive curve. Rosethorn Halberd putting in a little bit of work there, but definitely the Wildwood trackers. Those have been really, really impressive so far. We are 2-0 heading into game number 3. Here we are for game 3 with our most red hand so far, but that means we have 2 copies of 7 Dwarfs, so these could be 2-mana 3/3s. Name of the game with this deck is just playing overstatted creatures. 1-mana 2/2s and 2-mana 3/3s, let's go. See if it can pan out pretty well for us. 3-mana 4/3 tramplers. We gotta put in different amounts of work for each one of these to actually get those extra stats, but still pretty impressive. So let's see, we've got a lot of tap lands in this hand. That is the most awkward part. Am I going to just roll out with some dwarves starting on turn 2, or do I want to play a tracker? I think it's better to just guarantee dwarves start rolling out on turn 2, because if I play tracker now and I don't hit an untapped land, I'm going to poke them for 1, and then not play anything next turn. I think it's a little better to just poke them for 0 the first 2 turns, and then just start hitting them for 3 after that, because now we get to play 7 Dwarves and Wildwood Tracker on turn 3. I think that'll be a little better than playing a Red Cap Raiders, and from that point on we just start slamming down a bunch of Red Cap Raiders. I don't know, maybe Raiders is better. Probably not, though, because if I play 7 Dwarves, then I'm adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 power to the board. If I play Raiders, I'm adding 4 power to the board. That's only if they don't blow up any of these creatures, but still, the numbers are in favor of spreading the board state out here. Because this Dwarves gives both of the Dwarves +1/+1, so that's 2 power there, plus the natural 2 power from the Dwarves, so that's 4 power, plus the 2 power from Wildwood Tracker. So, yeah, adding 6 power to the board versus adding 4 power to the board. I'll take the higher number. Our opponent is on full Grixis. Don't see that a ton in this format. This is a format that incentivizes you to get as close to monocolored as possible for some of the more powerful cards, but there is still some good mana fixing, particularly Golden Egg being the MVP there. So there's a Scorching Dragonfire on one of the Dwarves, which is pretty good because that's going to take 4 power off of our board, as I was saying before. Now I could spend all my mana to put a couple counters on a creature, or just play a Raiders. This is going to add 2 power, this is going to add 4. We're just going to play a Raiders. That is better power. More damage. There are some things that could get us to play Oaken Boon, the +2/+2 adventure on Twin Veil Treefolk instead of Redcap Raiders, but not a lot. I think the main thing would be like Revenge of Ravens from our opponent. That makes it so every time we attack them, we lose a life and they gain a life. That would make it so we really want to just be attacking with like one big creature instead of a bunch of small ones. So then we'd like buff up our Raiders and start going in with that. But if they're just going to play a 1/1 blocker and shoot one of our creatures, we're still going to roll out with creatures. We'll drop a Redcap Raiders and a Wildwood Tracker and a Gingerbread Cabin for the turn. Couple 2/2s on attacks. None of these cards change that. Yep. Attack with 2 2/2s. Get our 4 damage in. I doubt they chump block because they're only 1/1 flyer away from trading into a 2/2 off of the Improbable Alliance. It's a really nice card. This is one of the big build-arounds for blue-red. Every time you're drawing a second card, you get to spit out a 1/1 flyer. So, really nice with cards like Golden Egg, Thrill of Possibility. Anything that can draw an additional card you can use during your turn to trigger your second draw. Anything that draws 2 cards you can use during your opponent's turn to trigger it yet again. Alright, wide aggressive board state. Still here. Still ready to beat in while they're down at 9 life. They do have that Golden Egg, which not only allows them to mana fix one time, they could instead just gain a few life off of it. Stem the bleeding a little bit here, and buy some more time to draw into some big late game plays that could try to flip this game around. They do have 6 mana now. Only 2 cards in hand, but 6 mana can do some big stuff. Opportunistic Dragon, they can steal our food, but it can't use its abilities, right? Yep, gain control of permanent, loses all abilities, can't attack, block. Cool. The fact that we're a green-red non-human deck is so good for us, because usually Opportunist Dragon would be a really big deal, where it's going to steal one of our like best attackers, but we have 0 humans in this deck, so it's just a 4/3 flyer. Still a big deal, still makes our attacks with 2/2s much worse, but could have been way, way worse for us. So do we think it's better to Oaken Boon something, or just play a 6/5 right now? If I Oaken Boon the Raiders, it's going to be 5 toughness total. They can double block and kill it, but it's going to be trampling in as a 5/4. Oh, it's going to be a 6/5 trampling in. They have to double block to kill it. They can't really not kill it. Yeah, that seems worth it here. The only way this goes wrong is if they have Scorching Dragonfire for instant speed removal. That would be really bad for me, because then they can spend a red and 1, shoot that for 3 before this resolves, and then the Tree Folk goes to the grave and the Raider goes to the grave, and that's just horrendous for us. Alright, so I'm pretty sure this presenting 6 damage is impressive enough to do an attack like this and risk just losing a 2/2. Because they're essentially at 12 here. That's presenting half of their life in terms of damage. Maybe this is still a little too aggressive. Maybe I should have only attacked with raiders. But I think with them at essentially 12, it is probably worth, worst case scenario, sacking a 2/2 to deal 6 to them and have their life total. All right, and this is why I think the attack is pretty good, because I think most likely they're going to think that their best play is the double block trade, because that's what I think their best play would be as well, which means that by attacking with these, we get 4 extra damage in that we just would not have gotten otherwise. So that went pretty well. We've got 6 power on board against their 6 life. See what they've got. They're just going to trigger the Improbable Alliance to get a chump blocker so they're not dead on board. But they are certainly in a bad spot. Now they're going to have to chump block and take 4, go to 2 life total. I'm going to keep this food. We've got the Trail of Crumbs we could draw into. Hit a Garen Brig Paladin. I think that is better than Twinvale Treefolk on this board, because they can spit out a bunch of 1/1 flying blockers, which the Paladin cannot be blocked by. So we will play the slightly smaller creature just because it has some evasiveness added in. They're just going to pass the turn. We go in for the kill, and they are over it. We are now 3-0, guaranteeing at least a 50-50 run this time around. Excellent stuff from just green-red aggro nonsense here. These last 2 games I've been really, really happy with the deck, because we haven't even played any of our, as far as I remember, we haven't played any of our like big bomb rares or anything these last 2 games. We just aggro curve it out, played our little equipments as well, our little 1-mana 2/2s, and we're just beaten down. Really, really big fan of this deck for these last couple games. First game, again, great Henge just being a mythic rare there, but pretty happy with how things went game 2, game 3 for sure. 3-0 as we head into game 4. See if we can't keep grabbing a few more wins here. Here we are now on the play for game number 4. Little bit high on lands here, definitely hoping to draw some non-lands, but overall we've got a pretty good hand. A 2-drop into a 3-drop with a nice way to buff one of them up. Certainly not a mulligan. We've got both of our colors. Got anything you can ask for in an opening hand. Now we've got an even better curve. We can play the Rider into the Raiders into the Witchstalker. By the time we play the Halberd, we'll even probably have the 5 mana to just move it around over time. Not a big fan of seeing a Scalding Cauldron here, because that is probably just going to kill my Redcap Raiders next turn. I could play the Halberd instead to get them to use the Cauldron on the Mareleaf Rider, but I think it's more important to make sure I still have power on the board after they Cauldron. Ooh, but they don't have a 3rd land, so they don't get to Cauldron, they just play a Merfolk to trade off on blocks. So I think I do just accept that trade here so that I can curve out with Witchstalker, but we'll play the Witchstalker pre-combat so I can at least trample over for 2 damage when they trade off. Oh my god, I forgot about Mareleaf Rider's ability. That would have been so good right now. I knew I was going to forget that nonsense. So I could have sacked the food and forced them to block the Rider instead of the Raiders. That would have been much better. This game looks like it's still working out really well for us, because it looks like our opponent still missed another land. Yeah, and against an aggro deck, that is going to be very likely a death sentence. We're already hitting them down to 5. The best they can do next turn is probably just Scalding Cauldron away the Mareleaf Rider, in which case they take 8 and very much die on board. They are green-blue. We'll see if they can establish anything. Just not going to be enough. Rough game for our opponent there. Kept a 2-lander. That's not that greedy. And they just really got punished for us because we were on a really aggressive curve. And they missed multiple land drops, just did not find the land they needed. So, rough game for our opponents. Definitely a learning moment for us as well. We certainly need to keep that Mareleaf Rider's ability in mind. It's easy to forget. I've just been treating this as a 2-mana 3/1 for so long, but that was the kind of perfect opportunity to actually just sack the food and kill the Merfolk, because I don't have my Trail of Crumbs. There's no reason to leave the food behind yet when I can get a guaranteed good effect off of that food, keep my bigger creature around, Because again, with Redcap Raiders, the way that it works is we're just going to keep curving out with more non-human creatures when we can. So this is just going to be a 4-3 trample most of the time because we can just tap our summoning sick creatures that won't be attacking anyway and still attack with the rest of our board. So definitely a bit of a rough misplay there, but luckily we get that misplay in a game where it really doesn't matter. So we can try to keep that in mind for future games where it could be the difference between the final like couple points of damage or our opponent stabilizing. So we are now 4-0, undefeated so far, and no matter what happens, basically breaking even, getting 1,400 gems and 3 packs out of the event. Super, super happy with how this draft has gone. Yet again, that was another victory with just generic green-red aggro beats, and the green-red aggro game plan remains just exceptional for us. We'll see if we can't keep it up as we head into game number 5. Here we are for game 5. Our opponent is on the play. Well, I was going to just turn one gingerbread cabin, but now that I only need to draw one more forest to get the food, I'm going to greed it out. Let's get the Embereth out of the way so I don't have to play 2 red sources to get that untapped. I can just start playing forests every turn from now on. Alright, with the Rimrock Knight and the Redcap Raiders in hand, I think I should just roll the Knight out rather than holding on to Boulder Rush. So I can curve out 2-drop, 3-drop here and get aggressive early. Mono white so far from our opponent. There's a 7 dwarves as the draw, not bad at all. Gives me something good to do on turn 4. Because now I can play Trail of Crumbs and 7 dwarves, and that's a great way to spend my mana versus my previous plan, which was play a Trail of Crumbs and that's it. Because it costs 3 mana to sacrifice your food for value with Trail of Crumbs. You need to sacrifice them to their ability for 2, and then spend 1 additional mana to the Trail of Crumbs. Ooh, 2 1/1s off of 1 adventure, not even 1 card. That's a really bad time for our Rimrock Knight, because that means this is going to trade into 1/3 of their card. It's going to trade into one of the 2 humans that half of Occam Ranger made, so don't think Rimrock Knight's getting in anymore. We are going to be on that Trail of Crumbs 7 dwarfs play here. Since the Knight can't block, we might as well tap the Knight to the Raiders instead of the 7 dwarfs. Since I'm definitely not trading Rimrock Knight into, again, 1/3 of their Occam Ranger here. So here is our 7 dwarfs, and here is our Trail of Crumbs, and I've got triple forest out now, which means the gingerbread cabin will give us another food for later, and Garenbrig Paladin is going to come out as a 5/5 that's going to be basically unblockable against their board state. Yep, that's a 2-power creature. These are less than 2 power. Nothing on their board can currently block a Garenbrig Paladin. 7 dwarves can't attack well into Tactician, but Redcap Raiders still certainly can. So we'll send that in again. Again, deceptively good card here. This Redcap Raiders has been a massive MVP as well. The vast majority of the time, it's just playing like a 3-mana 4/3 trample. Like, we're just tapping stuff that wouldn't be good attackers anyway, or tapping creatures that are summoning sick anyway. Redcap Raiders been getting passed around super late in a lot of these drafts because it just doesn't look like much, but stacks up into such a large stat line for only 3 mana. So we're going to have a lot of overperformers when we go over the deck at the end of the draft today. Alright, so no creatures that can block the Garenbrig Paladin here. I don't have the mana to play Witchstalker and do some Trail of Crumbs things. I should still probably play Witchstalker. Should probably start playing mountains at this point, so if I top deck another, I can use Castle Embereth. So we'll play a mountain as our land for turn, but then we just attack with the cards that are good attackers on board. They could use Castle Ardenvale here, get another 1/1, but that's not going to stop the Garenbrig Paladin. Hopefully no incredible instance here. They could have another Tactician. Yeah, another Tactician it is, so we don't get to make any attacks this turn. I will still play another big, beefy creature to get attacking in. We'll play a Fierce Witchstalker. And this Trail of Crumbs is looking pretty juicy here. Not going to call this one an overperformer at the end of the draft because I already was very, very high on this card. But I didn't think it would be as good as it has been in this deck because we just don't have that much food production. We've just been drawing pretty well to get our food alongside it. But yeah, now that we're out of things to do, we're just going to start going crazy with Trail of Crumbs. We're going to draw at least 3 more creatures to roll out with it. Pretty big. Going to draw 3. And of course gain 9 life off of all of our food. And since it digs for any permanent, we could pick up a Scalding Cauldron if we see one to clear out one of their blockers. We could pick up a mountain if we see one to be able to trigger our Castle Embereth. A lot of flexibility with this card. Pretty into it. So our opponent is actually green-white. I wouldn't have been surprised to see just a mono-white deck. You can certainly draft mono-colored in the format. But Gilded Goose definitely means they are not quite mono-white. Ooh, Silver Flame Ritual is actually pretty good here because it makes it so they do have something that can block the Paladin. Plus, since it gets a Vigilant attack in, they get some free damage in while still having the block for Paladin. But the Tactician is still small enough that it's just a chump block. Ooh, Halberd is a pretty real draw. Buff up one of our Tramplers here. I'd rather have a 4-3 Trampler and a 4-4 Trampler, or a 6-5 Trampler and a 4-3 Trampler. Wait, I think I said that wrong. This would be, see, instead of a 4-3, it would be a 6-4. So 6-4 and a 4-4, or a 6-5 and a 4-3. I think I like 6-5 and 4-3 better. I mean, either way, the smaller one's going to just trade into 2 2/2s most likely. It's going to trade into a single Tactician. I'm going to put this on the Witch Stalker here. I'm going to make it harder for them to kill the one that I don't have to tap creatures to beef up. I might even be supposed to attack with the whole board now. They're at 9. They don't have the mana to eat the food. But when they do, they'll be at essentially 12. Can't block the Paladin well. They can chump it. If they chump there, kill there, they take 6. Now that these are 2/2s, I honestly don't think attacking with Rimrock Knight is that bad. So we gotta hold at least one thing back so we can buff Raiders, but yeah, let's attack like this at this point. I mean, they can get a free kill Tactician onto Rimrock Knight, but that's only if they choose to take a lot of damage. Because that'd be, they trade here, free kill there, take 11? They can't afford to do that. Yeah, I think this is just a reasonable time to attack with just everybody. Technically not everybody, since the Dwarves are just helping the Raiders out, but still just so much damage. You know what I should have done differently? I was talking about it earlier with Trail of Crumbs, but we might have missed lethal here. If there's a mountain in our top 2 cards, okay, they're just going to concede here. They could have technically survived, pretty much guaranteed, but they would have to, if they didn't have a trick in hand, they'd have to lose a lot of their board, basically the whole board, because they would have had to go, like, trade here. Probably the best block is kind of what they're doing, which is trade here, double block trade here, take 5, Gilded Goose chump there, they take 8 total. They take 8, go to 1 if the Gilded Goose blocks the Trampling Witch Stalker. And then they kill this. Well, they lose their 2/2s and kill this. They kill that for free. They're left with a single 3/4 against this board state, so they're still probably dead next turn, but they could survive with 1 life. Anyways, what I was saying about the Trail of Crumbs is, if I had a mountain in the top 2, then I could have punted out a lethal there because I got so excited about the Rosethorn Halberd that I completely forgot about what I was saying with Trail of Crumbs, where I can find a mountain. And if we found a mountain there, we could have Castle Embereth, and that would have been lethal. So, because instead of playing a forest this turn, we could have spent the 3 mana. We had enough mana. Did we? Maybe we didn't have enough mana. If I spent 1, 2, 3 in order to sack a food and spend 1 on Trail of Crumbs, then I would have had 3 mana up. Okay, I did not punt out a lethal. I would have been 1 mana off from playing Rosethorn Halberd and using Castle Embereth. But maybe if I did draw Mountain off of Trail of Crumbs, that would have killed our opponent instead of playing Halberd. So if I did the math there, this would be attacking for 5 still. This would be 6. This would be 5. It would probably be lethal. I don't know. I don't want to do too much extra math on it, but it certainly would have been better to leave that option open and go for the Trail of Crumbs draw before combat, do the math then if we see the mountain. Either way, another fantastic game for this deck. We are 5-0 in the money, grabbing 1,600 gems and 4 packs no matter what. But let's see if we can't keep it rolling, heading into round 6 undefeated so far. Here we are on the play for game number 6. We've got Wildwood Tracker turn 1 into Wildborn Preserver into Redcap Raiders. That is quite the curve. It'll be a little bit awkward to play the Preserver at sorcery speed, but it's not like we were getting any extra value playing at instant speed anyway. So we'll just make the Tracker a 1-mana 2/2. I am in love with this Wildwood Tracker now. It has been such an overperformer. I kind of just never even looked at the card before. At least this time around. Maybe I already learned about Wildwood Tracker's power level last time I played this set, but it's been so long I completely forgot if I did. But looks like such an insignificant little card. But it has just been a 1-mana 2/2. It's just beef. It's just super cheap beef. Do I do Gingerbrute Halberd things? Do I do 7 Dwarf Halberd things? Let's be more mana efficient here. And let's put the Halberd on the Tracker so that it gets extra damage in this turn, and if they do Scalding Cauldron one of our creatures, it will be the slightly weaker creature. Because if I stick the Halberd onto the Raiders, then I just have everything loaded up onto one really big trampling creature. That is a very easy Cauldron shot. But now if they have to Cauldron, they just kill Tracker, and I get to keep these 2, which are slightly bigger than Tracker. Overall, there's a Lochthwain Paladin, 4/3 Menace. We hit the mana for Twin Veil Treefolk. They're at 8 life. Just make sure the Raiders is too big for Cauldron to kill and too big for Paladin to kill. That's pretty busted. I'm not sure what they can do here. This curve is nuts. They can trade into the 4/3 and go to 2 and then just not even be able to Cauldron the Raiders next turn. We've even got a Gingerbrute to guarantee at least 1 damage coming in. There's the Halberd to go with it if they don't have removal for Gingerbrute later. That's just game. That's just game. You just play super cheap creatures, 1-mana 2/2s, 3-mana 4/3 tramples, and little +2/+1 equipments to just beat down. This deck has been real fun. This green-red archetype. Actually, some spice to this stuff. The craziest thing about it is it's been so aggressive with the 1-mana 2/2s and the 1-mana equipments and things that I'm not even sad at all about the fact that we passed up on 2 Grumgullies. The 3-mana 3/3s that put +1/+1 counters on the creatures you play throughout the game. Because this deck is just so much faster than that with these hands that we've been drawing, that by the time I'm playing a Grumgully, it's like, well, I've already played half my creatures. Like, we're getting just extra damage in by just curving out before people are playing creatures by just playing 1-mana 2/2s. Rather than having our 4, 5, 6-mana creatures be a little bigger with cards like Grumgully, so this is wild. I was not expecting this at all, but now the worst we can do is 6-3. We are 6 wins in undefeated as we head into Game 7. And here we are on the play for Game 7. We have the turn 1 Wildwood Tracker, but we actually don't have any more creatures to play for a while. So this hand is not going to curve out super aggressively, so we're not going to put that much pressure on our opponent. We do have some really good value though, Trail of Crumbs of course, at least drawing us a card, and a Twin Veil Treefolk being a 2-for-1 later. Well, if we immediately top deck 7 dwarfs, then the hand looks way better. Still was keepable from the get-go because of the 2 colors that we had and Trail of Crumbs to start digging, and again, Twin Veil Treefolk for a 2-for-1. But with 7 dwarves, it starts to look a little more like one of the really explosive hands we've been having in the past. That does improve the hand considerably. Here's a Bloodhaze Wolverine from our opponents. They do have a creature big enough to trade into the tracker, and beautiful. We found our 3rd forest for the gingerbread cabin to give us more Trail of Crumbs value. So I think we just trade in here, send in a couple 2/2s, let one of them trade into the Wolverine. Guess that does get a little bit awkward if they trade into the Wolverine and we don't draw another creature, then the tracker's just a 1/1. Maybe I just send in tracker. That seems fine. And if tracker trades into Wolverine, it's like less of a big deal because dwarf is just always a 2/2. Cool. Alright, set up the Trail of Crumbs and pass the turn. If they tap out and a 4/4 looks pretty good against their board state, we'll go for Twin Veil Treefolk. If they've got untapped mana, that would be enough to kill 7 dwarves at instant speed. I think I would rather just start doing Trail of Crumbs things to play around instant speed removal. That could really get us. Alright, they tapped out. I'll just go Twin Veil Treefolk and start jamming in. Ooh, although Marrowleaf Rider. Next turn, I will have 5 mana, which is enough to play Marrowleaf Rider, sack a food, gain 3, and get the card draw. So yeah, we'll still just go for the Treefolk. That'll let us be mana efficient the next 2 turns. And because we're going to be getting multiple food tokens to eat, we're still going to just be racing our opponent, even though they're clearly aggressive. They're red-black. They've got the creature that can't block. They've got this thing that drains us for life. It's red-black Knights aggro here. I turned the music on because I wanted to hear some Eldraine music, but it's just the generic battle music, and it sounds like it's looping. Maybe playing twice at once. This is why I usually play with the music off. There's just so many, like, I don't know. It sounds like there's like these audio glitches where it plays over itself and stuff very frequently, but maybe I just don't like the song, I don't know. I don't like that they have a lifelinker here. That's a big bummer. Maybe I hold up the 4/4 to hold it off and just play Raiders and Rider this turn and go for the grind out game. Yeah, I'm actually grinding things out now. Since we've got Trail of Crumbs with 2 food tokens, that's draw 2, gain 6. If we can stall the game out a little bit, that should bring us to the lead. Just not what I'm used to doing these last 6 games in a row, but I think it's probably where we're supposed to be at this point, down to 12 already. Facing a lifelinker. The lifelinker, super hard to race. Enchanted Carriage, that is a phenomenal card that I definitely recommend picking very highly. 5 mana for a 4/4 and 2 1/1s, that fits really nicely into every deck in the format, so you should take it super highly because it's just a solid card that is guaranteed to fit in your deck no matter what direction you end up going in. I think this card was a little underdrafted lately, I've been seeing. I had a practice draft where I got 3 copies of it. It was nuts. So let's see. We just hit another land, so I could just play the 6/5 so that I've got a good blocker for the 4/4 carriage. But as you can see, this carriage, like, I just can't attack in well against the 4/4. I could trade the dwarves into it, but that is all. Yeah, I think we gotta drop the Treefolk, get another big blocker, and try to stall the game out. Stall it out for a while, try to draw into things like Garenbrig Paladins as win conditions. Just like big 5/5s that can't be blocked by their smaller creatures. So all they could do is like chump block with a 4/4 carriage. Or if they get a bunch of red mana, they could double buff the red cap to trade into it. I think they only need 1 more red mana. Yeah. 1 more red mana would let them do +4/+0, which would make it a 5/1, which trades into a 5/5. Garenbrig Paladin. If we find some of our 4/4 tramplers that make a food when they come to play, those would be beautiful draws. I'll trade there despite my ability to try to snipe a creature later with it. Because I think I'm just going to gain the life off of these food while I draw the cards. Again, I essentially traded into a 5/1 there, so I don't think that was a bad trade at all. Get that thing out of the way. Once we're later into the game here where they don't have a lot to spend their mana on. Okay, let's start digging Trail of Crumbs style. Our deck is 100% permanence, so just pick the best card in the top two, and that is certainly Garenbrig Paladin there. Rough part about this is if they have any discard spells, I don't have the mana to play the Paladin immediately. I think it was still better to just Trail of Crumbs right off the bat. Because anything that cost 4 or less, it would be really good to just play it right now rather than use the crumbs during their turn. There's not anything that makes us as far as I remember, this might be a really bad play playing this land, but as far as I remember, there is nothing that makes us discard 1 card of our choice. There is a spell that'll make us discard 2 cards that's very good. It's an adventure on a large creature. But even if I held the land, I would just have to discard the land and the Paladin. I guess I could use the Trail of Crumbs and then discard the land and whatever I draw off of the Trail of Crumbs. Okay, cool. No discard effects. Beautiful. So by playing this land, I get to pick up another expensive creature, and then if I top deck a land next turn as my draw for turn, I could play Paladin and whatever I draw off of Trail of Crumbs. That was kind of the idea here. Oh my god. I've got a 6/5 out? Oh my god, yes. That's a great henge. Please don't tell me there's instant speed card draw, because if there's not, yep. There's the concession from our opponent. That is 2 wins off of the Great Henge and 5 wins off of just nasty green-red aggro commons and uncommons. Really fun. Really strong deck today. Definitely my cup of tea, just beating down with some super cheap creatures, some very overstated, undercosted creatures, as long as you can meet those requirements to get those creatures going. So you definitely have to draft around the cards that I've been playing with today, but when you have the cards that synergize with them, they are really, really strong for their mana costs. So big shout out to Rosethorn Halberd for sure. This is a card that I basically never even considered playing for a very, very long time, but I think this was kind of the perfect deck for the couple copies of Rosethorn Halberd. They weren't like incredible, but they were very solid, which is a lot more than I would have given them credit for before. They were certainly helpful, very decent non-creature additions to this deck, but the biggest overperformer, the biggest card that I have to give a massive shout out to today, I'm gonna have it be a tie. I don't really have strict rules about my over and underperformers, but really these cards that just don't look that incredible, that care about non-humans, that just, you think like if your deck's all non-human creatures like our deck is, like you can definitely draft in green-red, these are really consistently 1 mana 2/2s and 3 mana 4/3s with trample. The Red Cap Raiders, it looks like a lot of hoops to jump through, but as you saw within the vast majority of those games, the vast majority of the times we were attacking with Red Cap Raiders, we're not really jumping through any hoops to get this trigger going and have it attack as a 4/3 trample. We're tapping a creature that's already summoning sick anyway when we're in an aggressive lead and we don't need that creature as a blocker, or we're tapping a creature that no longer has profitable attacks, like a 3/1 Rimrock Knight or a 3/1 Merrileaf Rider against our opponent's 1/1 tokens. There's a lot of really easy ways to find something to tap for the Red Cap Raiders to make it play very much like a 3 mana 4/3 trample more often than not, which is very strong. And again, Wildwood Tracker, even less hoops to jump through. Do you have another creature on board if you're a green-red non-humans deck? All right, good. You're set. There's your 1 mana 2/2. Just classic zoo, like 1 mana 2/3 Kurt Ape style card. Just beating down well above its mana costs, average power and toughness. So, really, really loved the Wildwood Tracker and the Redcap Raiders. The Wildwood Tracker, another card similar to Rosethorn Halberd, I wouldn't have even blinked at before. I would have just been like, yeah, it's a 1 mana 1/1. Maybe sometimes it's bigger, whatever. That's some nonsense, but it was incredible stuff in this deck. Redcap Raiders, that's a card I already knew this one actually plays pretty well, but even then, this thing played just insanely, absolutely absurd stuff. So everything in the deck played super, super well. I don't even know if I have an underperformer, because Trail of Crumbs as well was a card I was a little concerned about with our lower food production, but we just kept hitting those cabins at the right times, and that was going great with it. Yeah, Rimrock Knight did things, Seven Dwarfs did things, and I didn't even think they were going to be that great anyway. I guess we give Gingerbrute the biggest underperformer, because we didn't get to do any of the fancy things that I was thinking about with it, or maybe we put a Halberd on it, and then we've got a 3-power unblockable Gingerbrute if our opponent doesn't get a haste creature down. But that's not really like anything wrong with Gingerbrute as a card, but it was probably the card that did the least work overall through all the games that we drew it in. So we'll give Gingerbrute the underperformer reward, but I'm not even that disappointed with it. It was just an incredible run overall, 7-0, literally nothing that we can be upset about. I mean, there was one game where I played pretty poorly because I forgot about Maraleaf's food sack ability, but other than that, really happy with how the deck panned out, super happy with my draft decisions. Again, with the way that the games played out, with the way that the deck played out and what it was trying to do, I think passing up on those Grumgullies, we weren't even punished for that in the end, because Grumgully would have been good in this deck, but certainly not as good as these Redcap Raiders and Wildwood Trackers and stuff, so super great stuff all around. Fantastic day, fantastic draft, fantastic day's worth of games, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to be leaving with some incredible prizes. We're getting 2,200 gems and 6 extra packs of Throne of Eldraine. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the videos. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link or the YouTube join button below. Other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.